to the first episode of Living Through the Shift. I'm your host and podcaster, Tiffany Harris, and I'm so happy that you're here. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a comedian. I just started podcasting. I have over 10 years of experience in social services, and I've been taking care of my mom with dementia for over 5 years. And I'm really good at finding resources and helping people. What I've realized throughout this process is I'm a young caregiver, and there are about 25% of us out here who are probably thinking we're crazy, and you're not crazy. You're just going through a lot of shift right now. However, I just really want to help you through that process. So, today, what we're going to talk about, or starting off with, we're going to talk about our who, what, when, where, why. So, who I am, what we're doing, why, and just continuing to find a little bit of inspiration and just keep going. It is a really hard time sometimes. Also, the best thing that I've learned about being a caregiver is that you can only get about 2 steps ahead of this thing. I'm a caregiver for my mom with dementia, so I just wanna be a few steps ahead just so I don't feel like I'm drowning. And it's hard. It can be hard, and I know you're probably saying, "Why is she saying that?" And it is, and I think if we can all acknowledge that, but we can also say it can get easier and there are resources out here, I think that'll make our lives a lot more smoother. So, who I am, I started off doing comedy back in 2019 and I had to take a break. I've been in Nashville for over 8 years and I'm a Chicago native. And I moved my mom down here about back in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And she was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and I had no idea. Back in 2022, January 2022, she was fine. She had just gotten diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but she was still in the early stages, so she was able to live on her own. Cut to 2 weeks later, she ran away twice, tried to go back to Chicago, and I had to move her into an assisted living facility, and she lived there for about 2.5 years. Throughout that 2.5 years, we lost access to her pension, and as a result, I had to become her conservator or guardian to take care of her. I had to leave my job. I had to do a lot of things, and I had to move through a lot of shifts, and that's really the purpose of this, is that I've learned a lot throughout the process, but also I found really great support. I found a support group that I could go to. I also realized that in the support group, there weren't really many people my age going through this, and I was one of the first people in my group to be going through this experience. And through that, I've lost friendships. I've also gained friends as well. And I don't want people to make the same mistakes or missteps that I made throughout the process. So this is kind of me being a really good friend, guiding through you throughout some of the mistakes that I've made, but also some of the great wins that I've had throughout this journey. And what we're going to be talking about today is some of those things and how I navigated that. I hope you continue to listen. We're going to have some really awesome guests coming on here. I've met some really awesome people, especially in Nashville, throughout the Alzheimer's and dementia community. I've made some really great friends in the wellness space as well. It's really hard to take care of yourself as a caregiver, but you can definitely do it. And having community is great. And that's my goal, is to build a community with you all so that you're here and you know that you're supported and that you're not crazy, that it is a lot of stuff. And I understand I'm not a parent. I don't have kids. So it's kind of hard because we are doing a lot of these things that seem very similar to parenting, but unfortunately, we don't get tax breaks. And there's not many resources out here for us. However, there are some, and that's the great thing, is that this is your networking community. We're giving you the greatest resources. We're giving you the things that some of your friends probably wouldn't know because they're not in those spaces. And by coming here, you're coming to meet with people who know about the next best thing in these spaces, the things that are coming out in the next few months, so that you know, oh, let me sign up for this, or oh, maybe this is accepting for me as a dementia caregiver, or even just a caregiver in general. I also help take care of my dad sometimes. My sister, she takes care of my dad, and I take care of my mom. I call it the parent trap, but with seniors, my dad, he is legally blind, but it's okay. He can still hit on women, so he's fine. We're okay. But yeah, I do know a lot about that space as well, and just helping people throughout this process. So, where I am right now in my stage of life is I'm 34. I just turned 34 back in February. I'm in my fifth year of caregiving, and my mom has moved in with me. And that's been a huge transition. I've had to take off work or leave my job in some cases. And I've realized that sometimes people just aren't as accepting in regards to taking care of your parents. However, that's why you're here, so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. And even if you feel like, oh my gosh, this is so much, the greatest thing is that the people who are coming here, they wanna laugh with you about this stuff because dementia is hilarious. I think it's very hilarious that my mom, she has dementia, and she can also still remember to tell me that I need makeup or I need to get my hair done. So, we have to find humor in these really hard times. So, who do I think is listening to this podcast? I really wanna make sure that I reach as many people as possible. Maybe you're in your late 20s or maybe you're in your 40s and you are navigating taking care of your parents. You're trying to navigate career and children and relationships and finances, and you're realizing that maybe your parents were the procrastinators and maybe you're not the big procrastinator. Maybe you're realizing that life isn't what you really think it is. And I really just want to make sure that people know that this can be a really interesting experience, but also you can meet so many awesome people along the way. So maybe you're in your career and you're starting to have to take care of your parents, and you're realizing that my job doesn't have FMLA, or I haven't been here long enough, or I'm trying to climb the corporate ladder, or I'm trying to make more money, or I'm trying to figure out my FYSA, or, my high yield savings account, or my flex savings account, or my CDHP. Maybe you're just trying to figure out how to take care of yourself and take care of your parents. Or maybe you're not even in that stage of taking care of your parents, but you're saying, I can see the forest for the trees, or I can see the fact of the matter is conditions are appropriate for a fire to occur. And maybe your parents are avoiding having that conversation. And that is what this podcast is for. It's You're going to have people who had parents who didn't want to talk about this stuff. So maybe then you give this episode to your parents and you say, we have to talk about this stuff. What I've realized through this experience is that my mom was very afraid of certain things, and that procrastination yeah, she was fearful of things, but the procrastination caused a lot of pain for me. And I don't want people to have to go through that. So maybe that's the stage that you're in, or maybe you're in the stages of dating and you're realizing that you have to take care of your parents or not. And you're trying to say, how can I navigate this? How can I make time for a life? Because I've met a lot of people who said, I gave up my life for 10 years and I came back out here and it was a completely different world. Or maybe you're trying to navigate friendships because you are in the early stages of it, or you're in the late stages of it. And you're grieving and you're realizing that life is a lot more intricate than you thought what it really was. So that's what this podcast is really for. It's you're seeing your parents getting older, and sometimes it's not fun, and maybe you're in the stages of anticipatory grief, or maybe you are really grieving your parents and you're saying this is so not fun. And I realized that when I was talking to my therapist, I said this is so not fun, and that's kind of why I started the podcast. And we call it making space for grief, really. And no, there is no way that we can grieve perfectly, but sometimes we can put things in place so that we don't fall apart. And that's really what this is. This is you setting up whatever you want so that you can be as safe as possible and that you can feel like, all right, I can do this. The reason why we have 911, and my mom was a 911 operator, is because we've been indoctrinated and people have told us to call 911 when there's an emergency. And there really isn't a hotline for caregivers. You can call 988, but it's not really that type of situation. You really just need support. And there's so many different numbers, but someone doesn't know what number to call. So that's really what this podcast is about, which is, you're building your network, you're building your team, and you come and listen, and you get certain bits and pieces from each episode so that you can start building a life that you can live well as a caregiver. And I've met people who have. I've met friends who they go to work out every single day, or, 2 times a week they go and teach a class because that's for them. And I don't want someone to have to, give up their life because life happens. Life does happen. Shift happens all the time. And we say that a lot. We're always like, stuff happens. And then when it happens, your friends are like, that was a little bit too much stuff. And the thing is, you're probably around the wrong group of friends who don't understand like stuff really happens. But we're here to say it happens all the time. And there's things that you can put in place so that you can handle this, so that you can easily navigate it. And no, sometimes it's not fun, but it's the setup. It's the idea of I love going to IKEA and I love shopping and buying doodads, and I also hate putting together an IKEA case, but once I put it together, it's done, and that's it, and especially when I've done it correctly, and that's really the point is that we're gonna help you put together the things correctly, and, I think of it like a yoga class. If you come in and you're like, "That's not I'm not there yet," that's okay because we know that aging progresses, so maybe down the road, you'll come back to an episode and you'll say, "Okay, this is an episode." And you just pick up what you need and you drop off what you don't. And that's what we really say in yoga, whatever you want to do, whatever poses you want to take, go ahead and take it. So if there's something that you feel like, okay, I'm not there yet, I can't navigate it, it doesn't feel safe, that's okay. Just pick up what you can and then the rest will come back to you. But I am definitely hopeful that you'll definitely get something really great out of this. It's educational and it's going to be really fun entertainment for you as well. So just sit back and relax. It's going to be awesome. So that's really it. I know in my story, I started taking care of my mom when I was 29. My sister and I are about 6.5 months, 6.5 years apart. And my sister, back in, I believe, June of 2018, we went on this really amazing trip to Myrtle Beach, and I didn't realize that that would be the last trip that we took together before both of our lives changed. And my dad, he was living in Chicago. My grandmother had passed away about 6 months before, and he had two falls recently. He had broke the left side and the right side of his body, and this was the right side of his body because they both got a match. And she had to go up to Chicago. And after the trip, we were so excited. And then she gets a call that we have to drive to Chicago from Myrtle Beach because they realized that his insurance would no longer pay for him to stay at the rehab facility. So as a result, she had to go to Chicago, move everything out of his house, and move him down to Mississippi where she was living at the time with her husband, my brother-in-law. And I just remember getting back on a plane and just not really thinking about it because I knew that my sister and we had a very interesting conversation back in December of 2017 when my grandmother passed. And I remember her saying, I get I get dad and you get mom. And this was kinda like a parent trap conversation. And I'm like, I don't know, I think I was like 26 at the time. I had no idea what she was talking about. And I just said, "Yeah, okay, Court, whatever." And I didn't know that in several years down the road, my life would be impacted too. And I didn't really think about it, I didn't say, "Oh, yeah, like, we should probably have a deeper conversation about this," because I knew that my mom would age and I knew that she would get sick and I knew she would get help. And I also thought that everything would be great. I would have an amazing marriage or relationship, or maybe I would have kids and I would have a great apartment and, a really great job. And that was none of those things. My credit was shot. She was like I don't know, a 2-episode arc on Grey's Anatomy, and I didn't know if she was gonna come back or not regarding my credit. I had a relationship that was falling apart. My body was really going through a lot of stuff, and life happened when I was going through life, and I realized that I had to just go ahead and take it. My sister, though, she had to go and move my dad in with her husband, and that was about 2 years into their marriage. They had just got married, and it was actually about a year and a half into their marriage, so they're still in the early phases of their honeymoon phase, and they're really excited about living life, and then they have to go and take this, 60 like 6'2" man into their house who's using a walker and who's legally blind and has glaucoma and is slowly losing his vision, and he's not legally blind yet, but he's going through a lot. And, it was just a really difficult situation for them. And I didn't realize that. And I would go and help her, but then I had to start taking care of my mom about 2 years later, and we had to kinda go through the same process, and it kind of foreshadowed it for me. So, my sister and I, when COVID happened, we drove up in March of 2020, And I remember getting to her house, and the house was in a disarray and everything was all over the place, and I just remember thinking, "Oh, this isn't good," and my sister looked at me and she said, "She's gonna have to move down there with you," and I just thought, "Oh my god, no, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me." Like, it's COVID, and I'm in this job, and I haven't gotten promoted yet, and I've been here for, like, 5 years, and I wanna be promoted, and I want things to happen for me, but it was also COVID, and I remember us going to get a power of attorney, and we went to the bank, and the banks, we thought they were closed, but it was just really weird. It was just a very weird time, and I just remember thinking my life is gonna change after this, and it did, and that was over 5 years ago, and from that, I became a guardian for her, so or conservator here in Tennessee, and I have to file, a conservatorship accounting every single year. I was her power of attorney, but the notary signed as the witness, so he messed up the paperwork, so I had to become her guardian, and I've had to navigate homeownership and dealing with a lot of things that she just didn't wanna talk about. I remember years ago asking my mom, "Hey, let's talk about this stuff," and she would always say, "Stay out of my business." And, what I've realized is, okay, well, if you're not gonna talk to me, well, then the court's gonna talk to me, and then I'm gonna have to talk, to someone who gets it, and I think that's the thing is procrastination can cause a lot of excess paperwork for us. So if you don't wanna procrastinate, go ahead and jump on this train with us, but yeah, we're just really like the Parent Trap with seniors, so I have my mom and my sister has my dad, and we take them on trips and we've figured out navigating that, and now we're at the stage of I don't really take my mom on trips anymore because it's really difficult for her. She gets confused, and now I'm at the stage of navigating how do I go on a trip and go and live my life and try and be excited about it and also, make things work. It's a really interesting process, but my sister and I, we become a lot closer throughout this process, and it's just sometimes life will make you take a break. And I know where I am right now, I'm constantly feeling like, "Why am I in this stage of extreme character development?" Like, I don't feel like I need that much. I'm resilient enough. Like, I don't need to do anything else. I feel like I figured it out. And I think that's the point is, yeah, I have figured out a lot of stuff, but also there's probably some other things that I do need to figure out. So, and if you're dealing with siblings, I've also dealt with, siblings who don't want to show up and it's just me and my sister, but sometimes it's hard because my mom and I, we did not have a really great relationship through this. I was not the person who is, "Oh my god, I love my mom so much." I did love my mom, I also loved her from afar. I used to say, "My mom and I love each other so much, and we figured out boundaries so well that, we have to keep 2 states, between us to communicate." And that really worked for me, and then it didn't, and I said, "Oh, she's really all over my boundaries," and, it's kinda hard when you have parents who they didn't give you what you needed, and they weren't who you needed them to be or who they were supposed to be as a parent, and you have to navigate, you don't wanna help take care of them, but also you kinda have to give over your feelings because no one else can do it. I remember becoming a guardian and starting the process of that, and I didn't want to. I really hated it, and everyone just said, "Well, no one else can do it, and we called this agency, and they're really busy, and we called this other one, and they're really busy, so no one can take the case. So the only person who can do it is you." And I just felt like, "God, this is way too much. I really don't wanna do this." But, we figured it out, and I've gotten to the point where I'm okay with telling my attorney, "This is wrong. This is wrong." Like, someone messed up the paperwork. It wasn't me, So I've definitely gotten my communication skills up for sure, but I don't want anybody to have to go through extra paperwork or extra things. It's just really interesting, and through that, I've had to navigate, my friendships and my sister, and, I understand that, we didn't get the relationship that I got that I wanted from my mom, and neither did she, and I have to respect the no. I have to respect that sometimes she doesn't wanna be there, and I've also had my own journey where I call it forgiving while she's forgetting, and I'm forgiving her, and, I talked to my cousin, and he's a pastor, and he said, "You only forgive someone one time," and I say, "Yeah, but it's like Tyler Perry, so, like, something comes up, and then I get mad, and I stump him down, like, 2 feet, and, it's sometimes it's kinda hard, but I've realized that it can be really great. My mom is the sweetest person now. It is truly astonishing to me. Everyone's like, "Your mom is so nice." I was like, "Yeah, she completely got amnesia of who she used to be." And it's just really, really interesting, but everyone loves Jackie. I mean, they're in love with her. I've really helped her create an amazing life for herself, and I'm trying to help continue to create a life for myself and see what that looks like. And that's really what this is that this is a phase of life that I am in. And, down the road, things will definitely be different. And that's what it is. Life continuously shifts. And it's up to us to decide if we're going to keep going. And I think there's been several times where I've given up, and we're going to talk about some really dark times, and we're going to talk about some really awesome times. And I know the sayings, you can't bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. I've definitely been in that part before, but also in caregiving, and I think if any of you are or whatever, think you'll realize sometimes you can go to the water and you don't have the energy to even bend over and drink it, because if you do, you're probably going to drown and you need a friend to come over and say, "Here's a cup of water. Let's keep it going." And that's what I've met throughout this time. I've met really awesome people. So, yes, I may have lost some friendships and people who didn't understand the season that I'm in, and that the season that I was in at the time where things changed for me. And I've also met some really awesome people who have just said, "No, we completely get it." And I would rather have, 5 authentic friends than 15, non-authentic ones. And I feel like I finally understand the meaning of, you only have as many friends as you have on your hands. And, you know, I get it. It's not fun. And taking on this title, I think that's the purpose of this podcast, is that I don't want anybody to feel like I'm a caregiver. Like I've been there. I am there. I'm a caregiver. Yeah, you're a caregiver, but also you're a daughter, you're a mom, you're a son, you're a person, you're a friend. You're in a relationship. You're a boss. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you're a regular teacher who teaches kids in school, or maybe you're an instructor, or a yoga teacher. You're many things. You're multifaceted. And in this season, sometimes we take on that caregiver hat and we just wear it, and we wear it until it runs out, and then we don't know who we are, and we look at ourselves in the mirror and say, "I have no idea who I am." And I want you to come to this podcast and say, "Oh, I think I know who I am. I'm so many different things." And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about who you were before, because I know sometimes for me, I don't even know what things were like before. I used to complain about so many different things, and now I'm saying, "Oh my God, what was I complaining about?" No idea. That was so crazy. And also, I can talk about my own procrastination, and that's what we're gonna talk about. I didn't go for things because I was so afraid of, "Oh, I don't wanna, put myself out there for this job," or, "Oh, I'm afraid to go to a different job because this job doesn't care about what I have to say." And sometimes we stay at a place too long, and I think that's what we're gonna talk about, is this, like, flight, fight, or freeze. Sometimes you're in this stage of caregiving where it seems like things are just constantly being thrown at you, and it can be really difficult to navigate. And sometimes, for me, I'll speak for myself, I freeze and I can't move because I feel like I don't want to make the wrong decision. But what if the right decision is the wrong one for now, but still not choosing is still choosing? So we can talk about those things. And that's really the point, is, you make a life for yourself now, and you figure out how your family and how your parents fit into that equation. And once you start to decide, "Oh, this is the person that I wanna be and it works for me," and now I'm at the stage of life where I like my mom, I do, and also, I want her to be a part of certain things, and I also wanna have, my own life. And we just got a new caregiver, and, she said, "Okay, you can start going back to work," you know, uh, and I said, "Oh my gosh," and then she said, "Oh, you can go on a date," and I was like, "A date? What's that?" And she said it so many times that I just literally thought, like, I don't even know what a date is. And hopefully, as this podcast grows, we'll start to have more community, and we'll do events. And I'm a comedian, so I had to thank God I had comedy before this, that I was able to laugh about it. But even then, my comedy has shifted into, talking about my parents who are aging. And that's really hard for the audience because they're kind of like, "Oh, this is kind of cringe." Like, you're comfortable with it, but we're not comfortable with it either. And talking about that and saying, it's okay to talk about these things. It's really hilarious. And, but also now shifting back to saying, well, who was I before? What type of comedian was I before this? And I have friends saying, I know this is the phase of life that you're in, but maybe you should start thinking about the life that you're going to be in, when you don't have to deal with this. And this doesn't have to mean that my mom's not there, but maybe someone comes in and they help me more with it. And me being able to hand over, can this person take care of care? I've been her full-time caregiver for about almost a year now. And finally, with this caregiver company coming in, I've been saying, oh, they're going to do medication management. Can they do that? And that's really the point, is for us to be able to say someone can hand over the reins. There's people out here who want to help you. You just haven't met them yet. There's people who are out here who want to hear your stories. You just haven't spoken with them yet. And no, you're not crazy. You're just going through a lot of shift, and it's a lot of stuff, and it's really heavy. And there's also people who want to help you and find creative ways to help you with that. I found an amazing respite program for my mom, and I found that's $1 a day. I found really great caregiving for her, program for her that is free, and we're working on getting grants for her. So that's really the point, is to say, yeah, it kind of is frustrating to navigate it, but also when you're in a community of people who get it makes it so much easier. And also, this isn't to say get rid of your friends, your regular friends, because you need those. You need your club friends, you need your mimosa friends, you need your brunch friends. You're going to need different stages of people in your life and different types of people to be able to have fun with you. But when you go to your brunch friend and you talk about caregiving, they're kind of like, girl, I only talk to you about brunch. I do not talk about caregiving and diapers and disasters. It's not my thing. But they're there when you want to go and get French toast and have a mimosa flight. You want to talk to your girlfriend who is a social worker, and she's your friend because she understands and she talks about caregiving, but also you all can go to the movies and you can have fun. And I think that's really the point of this, is to say, like, yeah, it's hard, but also trying to make sure that we disclose information to people who really understand it, and also knowing that there aren't some protections out there for us in regards to employment. So there's things that I would suggest you do, and that's what you're gonna learn throughout here. How can you protect yourself as an employee while you're going through this? Who do you tell certain things? Who do you trust in this situation? Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of people only care about productivity. And here, if you're a caregiver, you are so productive. You have mastered multitasking to a T, and you are probably very exhausted. And we are going to help you figure that out. And I also have ADHD, and I figured it out because I was a caregiver and I could not handle all of this. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm drowning. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I had a girlfriend who said, oh, this sounds like you in college. You definitely need to go get checked for ADHD. And it took me 6 months, but I finally realized, and I said, oh, this is so unmanageable. This is why. And I've realized a lot of different technique, but this is definitely a safe space. And we're going to have so many awesome people to share with you, that I really just want to introduce you to these people so that you can figure out how to make your life a lot easier. I constantly see people out here struggling every single day. And I just think to myself, I feel like a lot of people are out here and they see people struggling, but maybe they don't know how to help. Maybe they don't have the energy to help. And unfortunately, now that I'm in this situation, maybe I've been a little bit more cynical. Maybe I listen to the song Friends. How many of us have them? And I don't have that many, which is crazy. But also, I have a lot more great friends. So maybe I don't have, 20 people that I hang out with, but maybe I have, 5 good solid people that I hang out with, and that's good enough. Or when people say, I'm trying to think of the saying, like, "Nobody knows the trouble I see." There's a lot of people who are out here who know the trouble you see. It's just they don't have the energy to stop, or they don't know how to stop. And that's a really interesting part of this, is that you're becoming more empathetic. And I know back in like 2019, everyone's like, I'm an empath. I'm an empath. But I've met a lot of caregivers who are empaths, who are absolutely amazing. And you get it. And I don't want anybody to have to go through that. But also, it's different. It's not, you have to be happy all the time, and you have to be sad all the time, or you have to be one thing. You can have like 7,000 different emotions. You can be happy, hurt, healing, and you want to go to the club. And you want to be crying in the club like Camila Cabello. Like, there's so many different things you can be. Honestly, whoever you want to be in this journey, however that's just why we're here. We're just here to, like, have fun and talk about these things. My mom, a little bit about her. She's pretty early in her stages of dementia in regards to she's pretty young. She's 68. She got diagnosed when she was 63, and she's probably been going through this since she was about 53 when they told us that that was probably when she was dealing with it. And we've also helped her live really well. We've gotten her hooked up with some really awesome neurologists and neurophysiologists, and we've connected her with the right group of people and also helped her build a really great structure for her as well. And she's really happy. And that's really great for her, but also it's been kind of a challenge as well. She was in an assisted living facility. Now she's living at home. Now she thrives while she's living at home. So there's a lot of things, she used to work for the police department and now she doesn't. And that's also kind of hard for her. She used to sew and I was really looking forward to getting all her clothes. And then in a frenzy of mania, she threw all her clothes out. So I had to process that. And sometimes it was very emotional and sometimes it still is, and that's really the purpose of it is that we're gonna talk about this stuff and sometimes it's a handful and sometimes, it's not, but at the end of the day, we all can do this. We all can continue and, I've been on the Reddits and, people say, "Oh, I'm so up to my head." And then some people say, "Wow, like my journey is over and what happens?" And, yeah, we'll probably continue to talk about this, for long because if anybody's ever gone through it, it's something that kind of stays with you. But some people keep it a secret, and this isn't a secret. This isn't, your finances are not a secret. The things that you're struggling with are not a secret. And that's really what I want people to know when you're listening to this podcast. I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through. In the beginning, it was relatively isolating, and I noticed that throughout this time, I realized as the years have progressed, more people have come out and they're young caregivers and they're talking about their experiences. And I've made friends who have figured out how to really navigate their journeys really well. And it became less isolating. I said, oh, there is a group of people who are out here who are talking about this. And I think even through that, I've realized that I've met other people who are in their 50s and 60s who they've gone through this. That's just something that they don't talk about. I think this is just a process that we kind of just don't really talk about aging or dementia or Alzheimer's or anything in that space. And I met a lot of people who said, God, I really need to share my story. Or, oh, I went through that for 13 years and I had absolutely no idea. And the thing is, your struggle should not necessarily be a secret, but maybe we just have to share with people who are actually willing to hear our stories and who want to help you with those stories. And that's why we're here because I get it. Life can be really crappy. And if you go up to someone who probably has no idea what you're talking about, they're probably going to look at you like you're crazy, but you're not because they haven't experienced that. I wouldn't go to a 12th grader or something and explain stuff about college calculus because they probably never had that experience before, so they have no idea. But in this case, I probably would go to a 12th grader and say, "Hey, have you taken pre-calc before?" And they know exactly what I'm talking about. So in that space, I want you to know that there are people who are out here who are going through the exact same thing that you're going through, and you can definitely get through this. I definitely think of it like a resource manager. So for me, I've realized that I'm really resourceful and not in a cocky way, like, oh, I know so much, but I do know a lot of things. And I think it's okay to say, I'm really good at this, and I really have this really awesome gift. And how can I share people? How can I share my gift with people? And I think that's the thing is so many of you out there are thinking, I don't know how to figure this out. And you probably have hundreds of numbers in your phone and you're probably thinking, I can't reach out to these people. And there might be probably like 10 people in the phone that you can reach out to who probably have access to resources that you have no idea about. But the thing is that people are afraid to have these conversations. And that's the point of this space is that you're not afraid to talk about this stuff. You don't feel weird. It's not strange that you're going through this. I know that, it was hard for me to talk about it initially. I remember one time I had some really embarrassing moments. My mom had like several accidents in one day and I just cried. And then 2 weeks later, I was talking to a friend and she's like, oh my God, yeah, girl, like they had an accident all over the bathroom. It's completely fine. And that's really what this space is. So even if you're saying, oh, I'm not in, this stage of life I don't understand, or I am in this stage of life, but it's really hard. It's really for us to just be here and find the humor in all of it. And that's really what I want you all to get out of it is that we are a community and we're going to guide you through the beginnings of the community. We're going to have some really interesting people on here, and I've already talked to them. So, a few of the guests are people who are here to help you navigate your resources, but also navigate your working and your resume and, you know, getting ready to move into the next stage of your life. So, maybe that means finding a job that works for you. But also, we're going to have Cheryl Blanchard from Alzheimer's Tennessee. She's going to come on here and talk. We're also going to have one of my friends who's a mortician. And I know that's not going to be fun, but it's going to get a little dark. But it's also going to be really honest because we're all talking about things that are honest. And that's what this podcast is about. It's okay to be honest and it's okay to tell your story and be truthful and also try and find the humor in all of it. It's not super fun. And sometimes it is really super fun. And sometimes it's sad and sometimes it's great. We're going to talk about dating and how that is for dementia and dating. And that's really interesting. Or how do you navigate taking care of your parents in a relationship? I think I noticed that when my sister got married, she started taking care of my dad about 2 years into her marriage. And we realized that was really hard for her, and that really changed the dynamic of her marriage. So we're gonna talk to some dating and marriage coaches and experts so that we all can realize that we don't have to give up our lives, but we just have to be a little bit more strategic about those things. And then also, we're gonna talk about where you are in life and the different staging. So we're gonna have some dementia experts come on here and talk about it. No, this podcast is not gonna be necessarily all about dementia or all about Alzheimer's, but it's just going to be about living through the different stages of your life. Right now, I'm in the stage of taking care of my mom with dementia. So I'm navigating comedy and trying to do all those things and the guilt of wanting to do those things. So we're just going to have some really great people. And a lot of these people I've met personally, I've worked with, their friends, their family and they're a part of my network. And I really want to share my network with you because I really feel like you could truly benefit from this. It's going to be a really fun ride. At the end of the day, you're not crazy. You're just going through a lot of shift. So join us for the ride. If you have any questions, you can email us at hi@livingthroughtheshift.com. And also you can find us on socials at livingthroughtheshift.com. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear your questions. And over time, we want to just make sure that this is something that you want to hear. So we definitely want to hear feedback. And yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. So thanks for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in to Living Through the Shift podcast. I'm so happy that you took some time to hang out with us today. While you're here, I want to give a special thanks to our sponsors, D&D Fitness. You can find them at dndfitapparel.com. And I also want to give a special thanks to the Russell Hotel. This podcast could not be brought to you without them. They have been so amazing letting us record here at their podcast studio. So if you don't know anything about the Russell is Nashville's #1 boutique hotel, and they also have an amazing program called Rooms for Rooms, which helps solve Nashville's homelessness problem. So definitely check them out. They're doing some amazing things. You can find them at www.russellnashville.com, and we'll see you next week.